Welcome back to the second part of this two-part series around setting up your own Xamarin Test Cloud on a local build agent. So what you're currently seeing is a build that's just about to finish on Visual Studio Team Services, and I'm going to show you how we set all this up with basically our UI tests and NUnit tests we were setting up in the previous video. Now, inside Visual Studio Team Services, you'll have build definitions. If you're not already familiar with Visual Studio Team Services front end, I suggest you look at some other tutorials about this section. But for those of you who do know this stuff, this is kind of nothing new to setting up a Xamarin Android build definition. But in this case, we're going to set up a local test cloud connected to our project. Now, inside our FaceOff project, which we were going through yesterday, we created a local UI test folder, and project here is the one that will run your app via your local build agent, and it will also commit the UI test that we created yesterday. So inside Visual Studio, we're going to change one little thing first, and that's this here. We're only going to set up an Android build in our CI pipeline for this demo, but you can actually set up iOS and Android in the same build definition if you really want to. You will have to basically just add msbuild to your custom script rather than getting the build to be done via a task separately. So inside the app initializer file, I need you to first change this part here and change it from debug to release. Because our app is going to be a releasable signed APK, we want to change it to the release version, not the debug version. So our UI tests are going to be committed on the release APK. So now if we jump back into Visual Studio Team Services, we are going to create a new build definition. Now I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select Xamarin Android and click apply. Now let's first name our Xamarin.Android build definition. We're going to call it local 2 because my first one was already local. We're then going to set the solution file, and we are going to remove this build step here, which is test cloud, because we're going to be adding in our own. So let's just save what we have so far, and we're going to save it into the default folder. Click save. Great. Okay, so first things first, we do want to add our component section and enable that task. We have to add in our Xamarin account or Microsoft account now, since we're not on Xamarin accounts anymore. And here, I will add my account, and I'm not going to show you my password, but after that, I'll simply click save. Then we jump into our NuGet restore task. We don't have to really change anything here, but in this case, because we're not using the hosted build agent, we are actually going to have to create our own agent, which is going to be the computer. So in this case, the NuGet version, make sure it's mapped to the correct NuGet version of your computer. So we can check via the terminal by simply saying NuGet. And you'll see here, this is my NuGet version, which is 4.1, but we can simply map that to 4.0, and it will still work. Then we jump into the build section, and this is the part which actually builds the Android code. Now we don't have to really change anything, but we do want to add in one additional argument, which is our sign Android package argument. So basically, when this code builds, Inside the bin/release folder, you will get a signed APK which will be created inside that folder. And that's the APK we're going to be using with our UI tests. So when I jump back into the UI test project, see that path? That's where we need to add that additional argument so the APK is generated in that droid bin release folder. Cool. So that's everything in regards to restoring components, NuGet packages, and building the Android code. Now we can remove this build solution part because we are already doing that in the previous task. Now the next part is we want to add in a custom task. Here, this is where I am going to add in a shell script. This is where it gets fun. Now we have to add the shell script path, which is the bash script that is going to do the running of your UI tests via the NUnit console program. Now I'm going to show you a bash script which I prepared earlier, which does the following. Now it echoes obviously just what we're doing, and that's first we are going to build the UI test project, which is our local.UI, our local UI tests here. Now I want to show you one more thing, and that's in the variables section. Now in the variables section, we're going to add in some of our own custom variables. And the first one is going to be local test project. Oops, so local test project. Inside here, I'm just going to jump back in to our previously built one. So this was one that I prepared earlier, just to make sure I'm getting the details right. And in the variables section, we're going to add in a few custom variables that our bash script's actually going to reference. Now, this is where it gets really cool. So we want to add in a first part, which is the local UI tests path, like so. So because the script is going to be, and make sure that wherever this script is running, you have to reference the path from that as the base destination. So because I'm going to be storing this bash script inside the main project folder here, local_test.sh, that is where I need to base reference my folder path to this variable here. So it's just going to be the current folder inside local UI tests, which is this folder here. Great. Now we want to also add in our report unit path, because we're going to be using ReportUnit to generate the HTML file, like I showed you in the last video. And inside this, we are just going to add in where we install the report unit. And I've written it down just in this text document. And this is obviously going to be based upon where it is stored on your agent. We also want to add the NUnit path as well. And that's going to be where the path location is of NUnit3-console.exe on your build agent. Great. Now, there's one more I have to add, and that is, yes, Android Home. Now, because when we run these UI tests via console, I also, since this is an Android build, and it's going to run an APK, I need to specify the Android Home variable. Now we can grab that. Basically the Android Home variable is an environment variable set to where my Android SDK is. Now if I jump into Visual Studio for Mac, jump into SDK, go to Visual Studio Preferences, and then click in SDK Locations and get the location of your Android SDK. So remember, this is all based, because we're using our computer as a build agent, this is the path that must be referenced based upon where it is on the build agent. Cool. Okay, so now I've got all those 4 extra variables. That's all we need to add. Now inside, I'm going to first add the path to my shell script, which is local_test.sh. And you can fully customize this shell script to do whatever you want. So I'm sorry, I can't add that password there because you will know how to access my account. And argument-wise, we can also specify arguments here that our shell script can reference, but because we're going to be adding them in the variables section, we are going to reference them via these. So now if I jump back into my pre-prepared shell script, I first just echo out what task I'm doing currently. Building local test project at location. Now see this capital local test project with the $sign in front? That's how we reference variables inside this section in VSTS. Pretty cool, right? Now, I then call msbuild, specify that path to my UI test folder, and then the actual csproj file. And that will go ahead and build us our NUnit DLL. Now then we say execute the tasks using the NUnit runner. And here we obviously have to use mono, like I was saying in the last video. NUnit requires the use of the mono framework. And because we've specified here, again, another reference to the environment variable set in VSTS, which is the NUnit path, always make sure that everything is specified in capitals, because otherwise we won't get the variable referenced correctly. Make sure the $sign's in front as well, and this will reference our variable set here. Right? Cool. Then we also specify the location of the DLL file that is built from the local UI test project, and that's installed in bin. Ooh, we actually want to do that in release. So that's a mistake there. Make sure again you're specifying the release destination, not the debug, like I was saying in the last video, because we are at the end of this continuous integration build. We're going to want to deploy the build APK, so we're always going to use a release build. Then we simply say echo and creating the HTML file using ReportUnit, and this will again reference the environment variable for ReportUnit path, which is specified here. And then we specify the location of the TestResult.xml. Now, because I'm running this script from the base project folder, that's where the TestResult.xml will be stored after NUnit finishes. So I don't need to specify any path prior. So that is our bash script. And that is basically our Xamarin Test Cloud, which is done all from my Mac sitting on my desk right here. So now what I'm going to show you, and then that's pretty much it. That's how you set all this stuff up in VSTS. Now, this is where it's going to get really cool. So I am going to get out of here. So look at that. This is a previous build that was run. This was done on my build agent. So the first step I want to do beforehand is I'm going to go back to the builds and I'm going to leave this new build that I created. Oh, look at that. On the right, we get Visual Studio Team Services with a succeeded build. That's what I like to see. Just for a funny reference, let me show you the amount of emails that failed. We don't want to see that. So I've done all the hard work for you, so let's close Outlook. All right, now back to our local definition. And then we're going to go to edit, and we're going to see this in a bit more detail. Now I've actually specified a deployment to Hockey app. So when this build finishes, you'll see a deployment build here, which will be ready for Hockey app, and basically ready for the beta testers to download and start using. So this is where you really want to try to use these things in Visual Studio Team Services if you have this available, because once you see this build and run, it's quite amazing how much you can customize this build process. Now what screen you're looking at now is this is a agent pool. This is the agent pool screen. And here, this is where we set up our build agent, which is basically just our Mac, which will, in this case, I'm running a Mac. You can do it on Windows as well. So to do so, if I want to, let me just find, so see this here, let's close this off. So I've created a folder called VSTS, and then I've created another folder called local agent. Now I'm going to open you up and see what's inside. Now all these files here, these files are simply gathered from clicking download agent and downloading the agent files. Now once we download these agent files, I'm going to do it from scratch so you can see it all happen. Just give it a moment. So once you download those agent files, you're going to get all these here that are going to be installed in a certain folder location. Now the first step what we want to do here is we want to actually say /config.sh. Oh. Because I've already configured it, it's actually not going to let me do it. But what I can do is I can actually start this from scratch. But I'm just going to talk you through it because this video is not about creating an agent. So in the config section, the first thing we want to do is we actually want to specify a personal access token. Inside, you go to account security, and here you want to click add. And I want to create a new personal access token with agent pools read and manage. Click create token, and that will be the token that will be used for our agent. Then when I actually click /configure, the first thing it will ask me for is it will actually ask me for two things. One, it'll simply ask a yes or no based upon just moving to the next step. Then the first thing it will ask for is the server path. And then you simply press and enter your personal access token, and that will go ahead and install your build agent. What I can do is I can set up a separate video so I can show you how to do this, but it's very simple. If you just literally go to the Visual Studio Team Services walkthrough, it's all there for you. But if you have any questions around setting up a build agent, please let me know and I can create a video and show you how to do this. So here is my local agent, and it's actually offline because I haven't clicked, sorry, I've actually stopped the agent. Now to run our agent, we simply say ./run.sh. And what it's going to do is that's going to connect to the Visual Studio Team Services and listen for jobs. So right now, all it's doing is the agent is now waiting for me to kick off a new build in Visual Studio Team Services. And that's exactly what it says. See how it says online now? So let's jump back in. And we're going to say queue, select our build agent, and then select our branch, which is the master branch, and then we're going to queue. Now off it goes, and that's now building. And what I'm going to show you is my Samsung here. Now this is my Samsung, which is running on my local machine. Now watch Visual Studio Team Services actually kick off the unit test on my device here. So I'm just going to talk it through. So obviously what it's doing now is it's restoring the NuGet packages. Now it's building the Android code, and we've specified that actual additional argument. So I can actually jump into the folder location here. It's actually in my local agent folder, then in a folder called work. You can actually specify this destination when you set up your build agent. And then here is where it is basically building the code off. So right now it's still building. You can obviously see it's working in the release folder. The computer is powering up. Now you see it's actually going to sign. Well, let me bring that back up. Okay, here we go. Now it's running the local test script. First thing it's going to do, it's going to build the UI test project. now it's actually going to run the NUnit tests using the console NUnit application. Now watch how cool this is. You'll actually see my mobile device kick off the run and the UI test from VSTS. So this is exactly like it would be doing pretty much in Test Cloud, which is the cloud, all on the cloud. But because in this case, I'm putting this local UI test in an automated build process. So in this case, I can now access internal networks and third-party devices. So there it goes. Look at that. So these are the same UI tests which we wrote yesterday in the previous video, sorry. And see that? See how VSTS is responding? All to these UI tests done on my local machine. So I think there was a total of 2 tests which are going to run. And there we go. Success. So basically, and you'll see in that last, whoop, let me scroll down. You'll see in that last, there's the report unit part. Sorry, it's going to keep jumping down. So what it's actually doing now it's signing my APK file. And then what it'll do is it will publish, and we'll see this even deployed to Hockey out. And that's pretty much it. So this is how we create a local testing. This is how we do local testing and how we want to plug it into VSTS. This is just one example. Now you can even customize this build process to do iOS and Android if you really want to. And I think that'd be really cool because yesterday we were actually running both Android and iOS tests together. One more thing I actually just want to mention is this, because I've specified this just to Android, remember in your test fixture, see how I've commented out the iOS part? It's just for Android. Cool. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Any questions around what you've seen so far, please just leave me comments on the video, and hopefully this helps you set up your own build process and connect it to your local UI tests on your build agent. All right, guys, thanks a lot. See you next video.